Welcome to the latest Gramophone classical music podcast. I'm Martin Cullingford, editor of Gramophone, and for this week's episode, I met up with a much-loved pianist, Dame Imogen Cooper, who recently announced her retirement from the concert platform. We look back over her remarkable recording career, and you can listen to that interview, along with excerpts from some of her very finest albums, in just a moment. This podcast episode is brought to you in association with RIMA, the European Early Music Network, and the organisers of Early Music Day, an exciting event to which all organisations in the sector and all early music lovers and audiences are invited to be a part. It takes place on the 21st of March, the spring equinox, and the birthday of Johann Sebastian Bach, and RIMA are delighted to welcome the recorder virtuosos Lucy Horsch and Sarah Jeffrey as this year's ambassadors. All contributions, be they concerts, masterclasses, conferences, interviews, behind-the-scenes videos and educational content are welcome. So to find out how you can get involved in this celebration of early music, visit earlymusicday.eu. Welcome to a very special edition of the Gramophone Podcast, in which I'm delighted to have been welcomed into the home of one of the country's, one of our era's indeed, very finest and most celebrated pianists, Dame Imogen Cooper. Dame Imogen, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Well, the reason for the interview is that you've announced that the coming year will be your last one of public performances. Mm-hmm. Which I can only imagine must have been a very difficult decision.
It wasn't. It was terribly easy. I mean, obviously there's a whole hinterland of stuff and possibly sadness and goodness knows what else that might hit me in due time. But, you know, I worked out that by the time I have decided to stop, which is February 2027, I shall actually be rising 78. And I have been focused on this and really almost nothing else since the age of at least 11.
Goodness.
And while I'm still energetic and with ideas, I just want to try a different sort of life. I love the playing as much as I ever did up on the platform, but all the stuff around it, like travelling and packing my suitcase and unpacking it and packing it again 2 days later, and just the sort of channeled vision that you have to have for this profession. I'd like a little bit of a change from that, so it seems quite easy.
And some perfectly understandable things there that you would like to leave behind. But what to spin it the other way, are you most looking forward to about not having that intense structure?
Well, I'll certainly free float initially. I expect there'll be 6 months of, just doing whatever the hell I want, which will certainly involve a little bit of travelling for fun, thinking of the climate probably more by train than by plane, which I also look forward to a lot. I have so many books in this house alone that I have not yet read. I don't read nearly enough. I just don't get the headspace and the time to do it. I want to write a bit more, or sort of dip more into that. It does seem to come quite easily if I leave myself time. But I don't know, I might be kidding myself. I have this fantasy of what I call a normal life. You tell me or perhaps you don't have a normal life either. I don't know. I don't know what that means, and maybe it doesn't exist, but I want to give it a try.
Yes, well, travel, reading, writing, it sounds idyllic.
Yes, it does. Yes.
I wish you well with that.
Thank you.
Now, I suggested a very specific format for today's podcast. I've asked you to choose 7 recordings from across your acclaimed catalogue to serve really as starting points for conversations about key collaborations and the breadth of repertoire that means the most to you, and to give an excellent guide to our podcast listeners as to how best to explore your legacy on record if they are new to it. So I've put them into roughly chronological order, and we begin with a performance taken from an album released at the turn of the millennium, with a title which I think embodies a theme we will be returning to, Imogen Cooper and Friends. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, that friend is specifically cellist Sonia Vida Atherton. Mm-hmm. Tell me about this first album of your choice, and it's particularly a recording of Rachmaninoff's cello sonata.
The only Rachmaninoff I play.
Right.
I don't play any other Rachmaninoff at all. I love this piece. She is one of the best of exponents of it that I know. She's got a wonderful Goffrey-cello, very dark in sound. She was Russian trained many years ago. And she's a player who has a tremendously strong and easy contact with her feelings. Whatever she does is really, I don't want to say profound, that sounds a bit pompous, but she's absolutely focused there where one needs to be focused, particularly for this music, because it can be played a little bit superficially or flashily. She's really got the Russian soul. So I met her in the late 1990s. I was curating the chamber music section of the Bath International Festival, and I was looking for a cellist. And the French violinist I was working with said, "I've got the person for you, absolutely no doubt about it." And he played me the first 4 bars of her Brahms E minor sonata. I said, "Yep, you're right, she's the one." And we became very good friends and did a lot of work together. And I hesitated about recording this Rachmaninoff, I thought, because it's a big piece for the piano. But then I thought, why not? And we'd worked on it a lot and performed it quite a lot. And we recorded it up in the Swiss mountains in the Thibaut Varga studio above Sion. And at every break we would go out and just look at the mountaintops full of snow. And it was a sort of slightly otherworldly experience, the whole thing. Yeah, I loved doing it. I really did.
And shortly after that, another album from you both came out, Après un rêve, which had the Rachmaninoff, Foy, César Franck. At that point, you were exploring together repertoire that you just felt was correct for your shared approach to art.
Yes, and that was far from unknown, but that we wanted to look at afresh. I mean, of course, with the Franck sonata, it is, as we know, written for violin. So the cello brings something rather different to it. We also played the Brahms G major violin sonata in the cello version, which becomes then D major. So it's rather different. She's a great one for looking at things with a slightly alternative eye. We had a wonderful time doing these things, we really did, and building programs together. And she had a very good recording team. And all of the recordings happened in France, in various different places, and it was a very rich time of collaboration.
And we'll probably talk about this as we go through the recordings, but the nature of what makes for a successful partnership is a fascinating one, because there'll be many musicians that you think are just brilliant musicians, but perhaps just not right for you as a collaborative partner. What is it that you look for, or what is it that makes a collaboration work?
Gosh, how long have you got? I think it's a sense that we are both looking for the same thing, or that the same thing is important to us, which probably, I would say from my side, is making the music speak, making the listener, helping the listener to have the impression that they're actually listening to a conversation and not to a whole lot of notes, however beautifully and excitingly played, but that they can identify with the conversation that is going on. How does that happen? I don't know. Colour, timing, a mutual understanding of what the phrase is about.
Well, let us hear part of that sonata. And then the first of 2 recordings that you've chosen here with the baritone Wolfgang Holzmeier. This first one is of Settings of Poetry by Joseph von Eschendorf. And I'm going to read a line or 2 from the review, which I felt captured the repertoire and spirit of this recording. As ever, Wolfgang Holzmeier and Imogen Cooper, unified in musical thought, bring alert minds and innate musicality to everything from the relatively simple manner of Mendelssohn, Franz Korngold, a delightful song written when he was 14, and Zemlinsky, right up to the etoilated yet complex world of Riemann. I mean, that just shows the sheer approach from different composers to this particular poet. Tell me about this this recording, about this programme, and why you chose it.
The choice was really mostly Wolfgang's. I am not a leader collaborator. It's not the main thing in my profession. I do it whenever I can. But I trust my singers far more to know how to put a good program together, because they've done it all their lives. Wolfgang is particularly good at it, I have to say, in finding links and making a narrative go all the way through a concert or a recording. So he really I had one or two requests, but by and large he came up with this program. The Raman was very difficult, very, very difficult, but the recording happened relatively straightforwardly. And the other songs, apart from the Schumann, which of course I knew well, and Mendelssohn, which I knew well, a lot of the other songs were fairly new to me, and they were a wonderful discovery. I thought there was some incredible music in it, not least the very last song by Ottmar Schoeck, which we both absolutely adored. And we recorded this, I think, in the Schloss Eisenstadt in Austria. And I seem to remember there was... Schloss Eisenstadt has a working cellar underneath with wine vats and goodness knows what. And there was a huge amount of noise while we were recording. And we had a Dutch recording team and nobody who spoke German, or more to the point, Austrian. So he stopped the recording at one point, although with some tension, because he didn't like being disturbed in the process, nor did I. None of us did. And he went downstairs in 10 minutes, later came up and said, "We're okay, we shouldn't have any noise now." I just remember that as being part of this recording. It was a rather traumatic moment. But I love this disc. I don't know why. I had a very beautiful piano and felt very, very free with it. I think we both did. So Eichendorff was rich pickings for these composers. How lucky they were to have had such a poet, and the poems are, of course, wonderful.
And there's a big variety of composers in here. Do you, as working on this program, did you feel a strong sense of link by words and theme that almost transcended the musical differences?
I didn't, but I'm not a fluent German speaker. I work very hard at the text when I'm working with a German-speaking singer. But for him, it was his natural language. So he probably would have felt that a little bit more than I did. I was just concerned in, all the things that a good collaborative pianist should be concerned with. One of which is to be solistic. You have to be solistic without making too much noise, which is very important, because you're the motor behind the singer, really. And if your motor is chugging along too quietly, it's actually of no help to him or her. You've just got to manage to get the balance right. And I had, incidentally, the most wonderful example of that the other evening. I went to hear Christian Gerhard and Gerold Huber. And Gerold Huber is who I hadn't heard live for years. Wonderful collaborative playing. Fully solistic and yet never drowning the voice. And pretty unlike anybody else I've ever heard, I think. Really wonderful. So I respect that achievement enormously.
No, it's a very different thing from working with another instrumentalist, and you've touched on some of those areas there. But I think particularly in song as well, people often talk, and again, it depends on the composer, that you're communicating some of the poetry in the sounds, and sometimes that's pictorial, sometimes that's...
And in postludes and preludes, particularly with people like Schumann. And that's absolutely right.
Big deal there, I think.
Yeah. So therefore, the capacity for colour maybe is very important. Not just loud and soft, but being able to convey something of the words that the singer is singing.
And if we were to choose one particular song from this album to put on it, what would you particularly like?
I think I would go for Wolf Verschwiegene Liebe, which I adore.
Also with Wolfgang Holzmeier and also on Philips, another recital, this time of music by Robert and Clara Schumann. Over this, Alan Blythe wrote the following: her playing, Imogen's playing throughout the programme, is at once supportive of her partner and individual in itself, which actually rather brilliantly captures everything you've just been saying. Second album with Holzmeier, that was clearly another very wonderful collaboration that you obviously formed an artistic view, shared vision with someone. How did that come about?
Well, the main impetus behind it was that we wanted to record the Kernerlieder, which is actually my favourite section of this recording. So the Kernerlieder are not a cycle, a Zyklus, but a Liederreihe, which is a sort of song sequence, I suppose you could say. But the general feeling behind it is extraordinarily intimate, contemplative. I mean, the whole cycle actually, the whole sequence inhabits an inner world that is devastatingly intimate and bittersweet. And it's actually, we both agreed, quite hard to live with for any length of time. I think it's as great as any of the cycles. And for me, it holds a very, very special place. We rehearsed and recorded it in Vienna, in the Otto Wagner Jugendstil Theatre, adjacent to the psychiatric hospital on the edge of Vienna. Incredibly atmospheric place. And my mother had just died, and Wolfgang, I think, was also going through something, and things were happening at a very deep level with this music, and one or other of us broke down more than once in rehearsal. But painful as it was, the music was, of course, very cathartic and certainly helped me through a very difficult time. It was quite unique, that recording, and actually when I listen to it, I can hear what was going on in the recording. I think we did the Kernerlieder again on one of the Wigmore Hall live recordings. But this, for the reasons I've just said, this particular recording holds a special place in my heart. And of course, we then had to lighten things up a bit because the Kernerlieder they don't fill a whole disc. And Robert and Clara, with their very strong and particular connection, seemed an obvious things. And we unearthed quite a few songs that were particularly of Clara's, but also of Robert's, that were very rarely performed and played, and I think put them in a good order. There too, there was a sort of narrative through which made some sense. And it's a lovely recording.
It is, and I think the fact that so much of it is two obviously composers' voices, but that sense of immersion in what we were describing earlier, almost the poetry and colour of sound, and one can hear the intensity that you've just described from the recording session. And we're 3 recordings in, and on each album you've very vividly described where it was recorded, what that moment was like. The studios themselves are not just sort of places in the middle of a city where there happens to be good equipment and acoustics. They're chosen for something special, atmospheric, or
chosen by Philips. I suppose Philips probably had access to these wonderful places, or certainly then, because we're talking about I think the 1990s.
Yes, it would have been, I think, probably the late 90s.
Recorded in the late 90s, yeah. Whether that could still happen now, I have no idea. But Vienna was an obvious place because Holzmeier lived there. And there were plenty of these places around Austria that were just sort of rich pickings for people who were looking for somewhere quiet, but if possible, beautiful to record. With good conditions for the recording team too. And I was very lucky in that run of recordings. We never recorded anywhere ugly or dry or no. It was a good time for recording then.
But you clearly enjoy recording.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. It's a very particular process. I've often been asked, I'm not suggesting you're about to ask me, but I've often been asked if it feels tremendously different to playing to a live audience. It is different, of course, but I'm not freaked by there being so to speak, a vacuum out there. Nobody in the hall just playing to microphones and the recording team, 100 foot away or whatever. It doesn't worry me, because what concerns me is to get into the can the music such as I hear it and envisage it. I never record something without having my mind made up very strongly as to what I want. I mean, I have heard stories, and I'm actually in a way rather admiring that people can do this, of sort of experiments still being made in the studio and the producer being much involved. And I'm afraid I'm not like that. And that's why it has been wonderful for me with Chandos to have the same team all the way through, Rachel Smith and Jonathan Cooper, who know me very well. And Rachel and I work incredibly easily together, and she always is there when there's something that is not right, or when she senses that I can do something better. But I don't think she would ever... She wouldn't say, there was a crescendo in that bar that you seem not to have done. I don't know why, but the end result, I think, is free and doesn't feel constricted in any way. And I'm tremendously grateful to her for that. But and she's a quiet and calming presence with a good sense of humour. It's absolutely ideal as a team. And most of the recordings I have done for Chandos were done at Snape Maltings, which was just about the best place in this country, I think, that one can record.
In terms of the sound, the location.
Oh, yeah, and just the history seeping out of the walls, Yes. I mean, how many times did I hear there, I don't know, Rostropovich, Vishneskaya, Britten, Piers, Fischer-Dieskau, Janet Baker. They're all there, and in fact, I have goosebumps even thinking about it.
It's quite an extraordinary place.
It's an extraordinary place. And at my last recording, the last 3 Beethoven sonatas, we had to, for various reasons connected with Snape, finish by 5:30. And it was still light then. And I went for 2-hour walks around the reed beds and the marshes then after every day. And it was just magical. I'm sure that helped the recording somewhere.
Yeah. And people have also spoken, and this might apply to all the places we've been talking about where you're recording, that the fact that you're somewhere where you don't then get back on a tube and have to travel somewhere, and perhaps because you are in London, you've also got other appointments and meetings. Yes. You really can just be present in that particular...
You're in a complete bubble, and I have to say it's the only way I can do it, because what I like doing with recording is doing a lot of playing but also a lot of listening, which is why I always ask for one day more than most people, because I want, when we part company, that Rachel is almost 100% clear on the takes that we're going to choose, because we will have listened to them already. And it helps me enormously too, because to be sent a first edit, or just to be sent everything and to make the choice after, is appalling. It drives you mad. Because, on the spot is where most of the work happens. And for me, on the spot is where most of the choices should be made. And it's then for Rachel to have, hopefully, for her, quite an easy job putting these together. And indeed, whenever she sends me a first edit, I have maybe a dozen, perhaps 24 tiny remarks, which can be very easily corrected. Because the thing is, you're completely in the bubble when you're there. But when you get the first edit, you're not. You're out of that. You're not in Snape walking in the reed beds. You're travelling to Heathrow and further.
Back to what we've just described, that sense of the busyness of life.
Yes, that's exactly what you said. And once you're back in that, you can't get back deep to that wonderful inner place where you were when you were actually recording. So
yes, wonderful. Let's leap forward then to 2019 and the first of the Chandos recordings that you've spoken about. And this is a recording of Beethoven's music centred on the Diabelli variations, also with bagatelles at the beginning. Your most recent album, which you've also referred to, like this for Chandos, is also of Beethoven. That's his late sonatas. So Beethoven's music, obviously a constant through your life, which seems an obvious thing to say to someone who's a concert pianist like yourself, but clearly something, though, that speaks to you in a specific way.
Yes, but I've come to recording these works very late. And both experiences were a little bit similar, actually, the Diabelli and the last three sonatas. The recording experience was similar. Getting to know the works was different. Diabelli I'd kept away from for years because, like quite a few of us pianists, firstly, I was daunted by it. I mean, it's 58 minutes long or whatever. And secondly, it's very hard to program intelligently because you need more than that to make up a recital. And I know pianists, far more imaginative than I am, who have nevertheless decided not to do it because they don't know how to get round to it. And I don't know what drew me to it one day. I started playing through it and I thought, firstly, I was struck by its humour, its tremendous humour. And I think learning this could be an incredibly joyous experience. And I also found, forgive me if this sounds arrogant, it probably does, but the solutions were, to me personally, very evident. There were none where I thought to myself in the process of working on, no, actually, this idea was wrong. I mean, the way Beethoven wrote struck me as being incredibly clear. It needs a massive amount of work. And I think anybody who has played it would agree with this. Because you have different, as befits variations, different techniques and moods every few seconds. Sometimes very fast to very slow to... And always you've got to find a different sound, a different world. It's a little bit like Lieder, really, except it's even shorter. Even each piece is even shorter. Except for the enormous fugue, which is difficult and comes right at the end when you're tired. There are a lot of challenges. But I have to say, every single time I sat down at the piano and started working on it, my face would break into wreaths of smiles. It was an incredibly happy experience. Fortunately, the recording of it was too. I had a sensational piano. And I don't know, we just flew. We flew along and maybe even finished ahead of time. The last three Beethovens was a slightly different story. I also came to two out of the three of them very late in my life. Opus 110 I've played all my life. Opus 109 I didn't like so much. I think I'd heard too many bad conservatoire performances, maybe even one of my own, I can't remember. Opus 111 I was just scared of. So I kept clear of them. Not the wise thing to do. I've learnt late in life that if you're dubious about something, you jump right in there and see what you can do. And that's a far better solution than taking a step back. So 111 I really wanted to play, and I thought I've got to play 109 too. And I did. I did my jumping in, and it was, again, rather a clear experience. The solutions, again, came more easily. I've learnt in the last only 15 years that the best way, the only way, is to follow the score. To get a good, clean edition, the best there is around, and to have the discipline of doing exactly what the composer marked. By and large, they knew what they were doing. There are one or two instances in Schubert only a few days ago. I thought to myself, no, Franz, really, you could have helped if you had done this, that, or the other. But by and large, that's where you have to go. And that's where, the slightly modern trend nowadays of playing something this way, because I feel it this way. Sometimes I get quite angry with young pianists and I say, I really don't care at all what you feel. That's not the point. Have you not realized? You're not telling your story. You're telling the composer's story, and he's written it all down. With a quill pen, he took the trouble to write a dot there, a phrasing there. Why? He could have written something else. He didn't. He wrote this. So take that as your point of departure. And I probably haven't had the full discipline to do this myself until the last 15 years or so. And I have to say, from there onwards, life became ever more fascinating. It really did. So I think that helped in my approach of these late Beethoven works. I tried really to understand why Beethoven wrote things a certain way. And then I just felt I was sailing, really.
And we've spoken about a number of composers, Schubert, Schumann, Beethoven, very, very close to you. But then our next album takes us into a very different type of repertoire and indeed part of Europe. Also from 2019, again on Chandos, Iberia y Francia, Spain and France, as the title suggests. Composers who themselves have often tied together the atmosphere of both in score and in spirit. Albéniz, Debussy, Fayard, Montpou, Ravel. This is wonderfully evocative music, and I love this album. You bring out all the colours, sense and an atmosphere of the world conjured up by these composers wonderfully.
I'm glad you love it, because I love it too. It was a very happy recording experience with a stunningly sensuous piano. It was a real joy to play. This was very personal to me. It was connected to my newfound discovery of haunts that I can disappear to in both Provence and Catalonia, which are still both very present in my life. There are pianos in each place. There's peace and beauty around. I really recharge my batteries there. Catalonia was completely new to me. The coast ran there, the rugged mountains, people speaking French around as well as Catalonian, which was a help to me. And I found that new fascination with the connection between Spanish and French composers of the end of the 19th century and their own fascination with each other's characteristics, structure and form in the French, wild abandon in the Spanish. The mutual admiration and sometimes criticism between Debussy and de Falla, Montpau and Albéniz, both coming from Catalonia. I think the links I made in this recording were more felt and instinctive than actually proven, but they mattered to me. And I love this album, and I don't play all of this music on the platform, but just recreating it in Snape again, I think, yes, Snape, was a really joyous experience.
Absolutely. And of course it opens with Ravel, who perhaps most embodies this growing up in Cibourg, Saint-Jean-de-Luz, right on the border in the Basque country.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And you know that he chose the title not for any reason, but because he liked the sound of the words "enfant défunte."
I only learned that recently.
Yes,
I spent all those years assuming there was a sort of an evocative something being depicted.
Sort of Velasquez Meninas or something.
A word joke in a way. But,
no. He liked the way it sounded.
Yes, but it is very, very beautiful.
It's a wonderful piece.
And if you were to invite someone to hear one work from here, hopefully to then explore it all, what would you choose?
Well, why don't we go for something very untypical of me, like Montpau, one of the Canzoni Danza. The Mozart Concerto, this was part of a series made with the Northern Symphonia, as they were then, with the wonderful Bradley Kresik leading, but with no conductor. I directed from the keyboard. And this was in the Sage. Well, it's not called the Sage anymore now, the big hall of the Sage. And the hall was relatively new. And I had a very strong connection with the Northern Symphonia, and indeed with the hall, because the program director of the then Sage, a wonderful man called Simon Clugston, would take me around the building site as it was growing. I saw it over about 2 or 3 times, so I really felt very attached to the sage. And he was also behind the idea of us recording live 6 Mozart concertos, of which there would be 2 on each disc. But in conditions that would be unthinkable now. We were so lucky. They recorded our rehearsals, recorded 2 live concerts, same program, one night after the other, and then the next morning, so this was over 4 days, a patch session. Now this, I'm afraid, would be unthinkable nowadays, far too expensive. But of course, the orchestra were in their own hall, so it was just about possible. They really pushed the boat out to make it easy for all of us. And it was a wonderful experience. And I just listened the other day to K482 for the benefit of this program, and I was very pleasantly struck by the energy and impetus that we managed to find, because if you don't have a conductor there, I mean, not all conductors are helpful, but when they are helpful, they keep things going along, Whereas if you're a player watching for another player the other side of the stage, things can sometimes drop back, impetus, tempo-wise. Certainly in this particular concerto, they didn't. And it is a very, very lively, big work. There was beautiful woodwind playing, really important in this concertante work. I seem to be in relaxed mode. I really can't think how, because the stress was enormous, but the playing seems to be all right. And the whole project was a very happy one for all of us. We adored getting together. You note that I've only chose recordings that have made me feel happy, but I think there's a logic behind that.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you chose. I was listening to this recording yesterday evening, so I'm glad this was the Mozart that you chose. K482 paired on the recording on the Avi label with K456. And
yes.
And one can really hear that collegiality, a kind of joyful collegiality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They were wonderful to work with. Of course, if you're doing that, the importance of your link with the first violin is enormous, because they have to do a large part of the work. I don't actually gesticulate much on the piano. Certain amount in rehearsal, but in recording or performing, I don't know, I just show a bit of body language and a lot of energy, but I don't actually wave my arms around. But it means that the leader has to be, spot on and completely there. And he was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
So that's fascinating, and it'd be good to explore that a little bit. So in the rehearsal, that's very much where you, as conductor from the piano, are sharing, shaping your vision, bringing them together with it, so that when you come to perform it happens as you wish it to be. Yes,
it could also be that in rehearsal you're nearer the very beginning of your collaboration, so you feel the gestures are more necessary just in case your playing has not made something clear, which is actually insulting to the players, because they're all so incredibly experienced. They can pick up the slightest thing that you're doing. They can hear it, they can see it. But just for your own benefit, you feel you've got to, in quotes, show more, But the nearer you get to the performance, the more you realise that's absolutely not necessary. I mean, there were those that did. If you look back to the Barenboim days with the ECO, he jumps up and down off the stool, and to be honest, I'm sure he didn't really need to do that either, but that was the natural way for him. I mean, he was a bombshell of energy, so perhaps it wasn't surprising, but I've never found in performance that that's really necessary.
And your final choice takes us back to Chandos with an album called Les Trompes Perdues. And while this is the most recent recording we're considering, in a way it takes us right back to the beginning of your career, to works you learnt as a student studying at the Paris Conservatoire or in Vienna with Alfred Brendel. So perhaps you can begin by describing what you decided to put on this record? Music you'd lived with over decades.
Yeah, yes and no. The whole point was that these were works that I had studied, as you rightly said, in Paris and Vienna, but never performed as an adult. So they'd been sitting in a little cupboard inside myself. And I had so many questions to myself. Where had they gone in me? What did they mean to me now? Had they evolved by themselves? Sort of, had they been simmering gently inside me? Could I change them after so many years? Did I still love them? And this was a fascinating journey. And it was also fascinatingly what it was possible to change, what I actually didn't need to change because I'd been taught it so well as a young girl. I'm thinking there of the Ravel Valse Noble et Sentimentale, very difficult work to bring off. And most of the markings in my scores still made complete sense to me.
Interesting.
I mean, of course, I had worked with Jacques Février, who had worked with Maurice Ravel.
Right.
So there was a direct link going straight down there, which was very helpful. But, quite often you move away from markings and think, oh no, I don't really feel that anymore. And I looked back and it came really down to the essence of the whole thing to me. But there were other works that I realized I had to polish up and see anew and learn anew. Although, of course, what you've learnt as a teenager stays. It does stay somewhere in the brain.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me if it was muscle memory, and I was told by a doctor that it's not muscle memory, it's actually the brain. It's where it is in the brain. You have to go find it there. And if you work hard enough, it does come back. It's extraordinary.
So to talk through the works here, you've mentioned Ravel's Les Sentimentali, Respighi, Fauré, Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody. Was there a large number of works you thought, goodness, what could I put on here? Or...
Well, I don't know. Somehow the building of it happened very naturally. Obviously, I wanted it to be musically cogent and attractive to listen to. The juxtaposition of how we recorded things or put them on disc was also important. But it just started turning out as to be a rather good mixture of things that I simply had not looked at for too many years. I mean, the Respighi, which I think is a gorgeous piece, absolutely gorgeous piece, was not... That's my one cheat. It wasn't something I worked on when I was in Paris, but it was a signature tune to a late night program, which I used to listen to regularly. Some sort of romantic chat show, sort of people or a problem seeker show. And this was the signature tune, and I absolutely loved it. So I thought, why don't I go back there? The rest, I think it makes up quite a good mixture. And this was a very particular recording because we were barely out of COVID. And this is the one Chandos recording I did. Snape Mortings was not available. So we went to Potton Hall, also a good venue.
Also in Suffolk.
Yeah, that's right. And I lived in a little cottage not far away. I remember we were all wearing masks. But of course, as you know, in COVID time, recording was the easiest thing you could do because the team were miles away. You could speak by telephone if you had to, cover yourself with a mask. I can't remember the exact month I recorded it, but maybe that doesn't matter. So the circumstances were very different, and that was not maybe the easiest recording I made, but I felt so strongly about putting these pieces together that after some editing and tweaking of sound a bit, it was quite hard to get the sound I wanted. But Rachel Smith, of course, could do it. Yes, and I enjoyed going back to those parts of my life and what they had actually meant to me.
Did it feel like looking backwards or more carrying of something into today?
Both. It was looking backwards because there were some pieces during which I still felt myself to be the little girl or the younger, let's say like 14, 15-year-old or something like that. Not least because instinctively you go back to doing things the way you first learnt them. But then I had to stand back and be elderly adult I was and think, yes, that was then, but what about now?
Yeah.
And what does the music actually need? And that's where it was beautiful, that sometimes it didn't need anything much different. I just needed to play them better. And some took a real rethink.
And I can only imagine what an extraordinarily evocative period of your life when you first encountered these pieces. It was. You were very young when you went to Paris.
I was 12.
Yeah. I mean, just an extraordinary thing. The new city, very different from visiting a city now. Everything would have felt perhaps more different. And then, of course, studying with Alfred Brendel in Vienna, learning your art, learning your creativity, learning your voice, and playing this music again, and now perhaps listening to it back when you listen to the recording, just must bring back those moments.
It did, very much so. Of course, both cities were completely different then as to the way they are now. I think Vienna in particular, Vienna was up against the wall then, and Bratislava, which is now an hour's drive, no difference to thinking about Australia. I mean, it was that far away. There was no access to it. Vienna was sooty and black and dark. It was before it was all cleaned up. It seemed to me when I was living there that the median age was, way over 60. I mean, I was only 20 myself, so maybe everybody was 40, I don't know, but everybody seemed a lot older than me. The place was quite gloomy, but incredibly atmospheric. There was no U-Bahn yet, so you had to go around on the trams, and I can still hear the sound of the trams rattling along the tram lines. And I was never entirely happy there, except during my lessons with Brendel, which were without parameters of time. He was incredibly generous with his time. But I have to say, when I came back here to London, each time I came back from Vienna, 2 or 3 times, the place was under my skin. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I couldn't wait to get back there. And I felt that here I didn't really belong.
That's interesting.
Which is also what I felt while I was living in Paris, which was much longer. That was sick. But I became a little French girl, really. Definitely felt more French than English, which is a feeling that hasn't completely left me.
Yes. And you can sense that when you play French repertoire?
Yes, a lot. Yes. We were plunged into Debussy, Ravel, and the Romantics, Schumann, Chopin, Liszt, which was right, really. I did the occasional Beethoven sonata, but, probably the slow movement and the last movement, because that's what the exams asked for, and perhaps you didn't play the first movement. Even worse, Bach preludes and fugues, not the preludes because they were too easy. Give me a break. They were too easy. You just played the fugues. I mean, there was a way of thinking in Paris then which was absolutely insane. But the core of German music I came to with Brendel.
Well, perhaps then let's should we hear some Ravel with that?
Yes.
Let's play some Ravel.
Maybe some of Chandos.
Let's hear some of Chandos. Whoa, we have covered so much ground. Dame Imogen Cooper, I wish you all deserved joy in the coming year, what I imagine will be both a joyful but also a very moving one.
Yes.
And I urge every listener to this episode to explore the recordings we've been discussing, details of which you will find on our website, and indeed to let that merely be the start of a journey through a really splendid catalogue of recordings by today's guest. Dame Imogen, thank you so very much indeed.
It's been a great pleasure, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you for downloading this edition of the Gramophone Podcast. If you've enjoyed it, we'd be hugely grateful if you could leave a rating or a review, hit the subscribe button, or simply tell your friends about our work. And if you want to explore classical music in even greater depth with Gramophone, then we produce a monthly magazine packed full of interviews, features and reviews, as well as a website with even more exciting classical coverage to explore and enjoy. And all listeners to this podcast can get a 20% discount off any subscription package by visiting gramophone.co.uk/subscribe and entering the code podcast20 at the checkout. Thank you to our sponsors of this week's episode, REMA, the European Early Music Network, and the organisers of Early Music Day, which takes place on March the 21st. And just a reminder to visit earlymusicday.eu, where you can find out all about this very exciting event. And do join us again for another Gramophone podcast next week.